There's a specific way financial stress shows up in relationships that almost no one names. It doesn't look like a fight about money. It doesn't look like a dramatic conversation where everything comes out. It looks like being in the room and somewhere else entirely. It looks like saying, "I'm fine," in a way that's technically true and completely isn't. Looks like laughing at the right moments and calculating in the background the whole time. What's actually happening in those moments, and why it keeps happening even when things are okay, is what this video is specifically about. Not the debt itself, what the debt is doing to the people around you, and to the version of you that shows up for them. Because there is a cost here that almost no financial conversation ever reaches. And once it has a name, it stops running quietly in the background. Let's start with what this actually looks like in your daily life. Here's what it tends to look like in daily life. A friend texts about dinner plans, somewhere a little nicer than usual, and before the excitement even fully registers, the calculation starts. Can this work right now? What's in the account? Is this the week before or after the thing clears? And the reply comes back. Can't make it this time. Maybe next month. And next month the same thing happens. Over time, the invitations slow down. Not because anyone is angry, because the pattern has been read as disinterest, and the loneliness that follows doesn't feel like a financial event. It feels like a social one. Or it shows up like this. A partner mentions wanting to take a trip. Something small, nothing extravagant. And the response is a version of, "Let's see," which means, "I can't think about this right now because thinking about it requires looking at numbers I'm not ready to look at." And the conversation closes before it opened, and the partner doesn't know why exactly. They just notice that certain conversations have started going somewhere flat, or it shows up in the smaller moments. A Saturday afternoon that should feel easy, no agenda, nowhere to be, and the mind is running the numbers anyway. Checking without opening the app. Doing the math on things that haven't happened yet. Being present in the room and completely absent from it. None of these moments feel like financial events. They feel like personality shifts, like becoming someone who is harder to reach, like losing access to a version of yourself that used to be more available, more spontaneous, more there. And the connection to money, to the specific weight of carrying a financial situation that hasn't been fully spoken, almost never gets made, because the symptoms don't announce themselves as financial symptoms. They announce themselves as distance. Now, let's talk about how this distance actually works, and why it's so hard to trace back to money. Here's what's actually happening. Shame. Not debt, not the number in the account, but shame is a social emotion. It evolved specifically in the context of other people. Its function, neurologically, is to protect us from exposure in a group, from being seen as inadequate, as a burden, as someone who doesn't belong. And when it activates around money, it doesn't stay in the financial compartment. It moves into every situation where exposure feels possible, which, when you're carrying a financial secret, even a partial one, is almost every situation involving the people you're closest to. Research on shame and concealment consistently shows something important. Concealment is cognitively expensive. When a significant part of your experience is being managed, kept from view, kept from conversation, kept from the natural places it would otherwise surface. It requires ongoing mental energy to maintain that management. It doesn't feel like active work. It feels like background noise. But background noise at high volume, running continuously, is exhausting in a way that's very hard to trace back to its source. And here is where the relationship cost comes in specifically. Intimacy. Real intimacy, the kind that makes relationships feel like relationships rather than shared living arrangements, requires presence, not perfection, not full disclosure of every difficult thing, but genuine presence. And genuine presence is very difficult to sustain when a significant part of your internal experience is being actively managed away from view. You cannot be fully available to someone you are partially hiding from, even when what you are hiding is not a fact. Even when a partner technically knows the debt exists, what is often hidden is not the number. It's the weight of carrying it. The 3 a.m. math, the specific dread that lives underneath the ordinary days. The performance of being fine when fine is not quite accurate, and the people who love you experience that management as something else entirely. They don't see concealment. They see someone who has become harder to reach, someone who deflects certain conversations, someone who is there and not quite there, someone who laughs. But something is slightly off about the timing. The shame travels. It just doesn't announce where it came from. So what actually gets lost when this cycle runs long enough? Here is what quietly erodes. Not the big things. Not trust, not commitment, not love. Those stay. The quiet things go first. Spontaneity. The ability to say yes to something without running the calculation first. The version of you that could make a decision in the moment because the background wasn't this loud. Full presence. The Saturday where the mind was actually there. The conversation where you weren't half managing something else while appearing to listen. The moment someone said something funny and you laughed without the lag of a mind that was somewhere else. And this is the part that tends to land hardest. The people in your life are not experiencing your death. They are experiencing your absence. They don't have language for it either. They know something has shifted. The texture of being with you has changed, but they can't point to why. So they explain it the way available explanations allow. You've been stressed lately, you've been busy, you're going through something, and the gap widens. Not because of conflict, because of the specific loneliness of carrying something that colors everything, and having no one in your life who knows the full color of it. Anyone who's been carrying this knows that moment. The one where you're about to walk into something, a family dinner, a party, a conversation with a partner, and you take a breath and put the weight somewhere it won't show. And walk in, and perform, and come home exhausted from something that should have been easy. This is not a relationship problem. This is not a character problem. This is a shame concealment cycle that has been running so long it has started to feel like personality. Like this is just who you are now. Quieter, more internal, harder to reach. And it isn't. It is what happens to a person who has been carrying something alone for long enough that the carrying has become invisible, even to them. The mechanism has a name now. And naming it is the first interruption. The next part of this, for a lot of people watching, is a conversation. Not the one that lists the debts and the numbers. The one that says, here is what it has actually been like to carry this. That conversation is different from any money talk you've probably had before. And there is a guide in the description built specifically for it, with the exact language for opening that conversation without it turning into a fight or a shame spiral, including how to prepare emotionally before it happens. Link is in the description and the pinned comment. So what actually interrupts this cycle? Here is what the research on shame consistently shows about how it loses power. It loses power when it is witnessed, not fixed, not solved, witnessed. When the thing that has been hidden is seen by someone, and the feared consequence does not follow, the threat response begins to quiet. This does not mean the conversation has to be complete. It does not mean sitting down with a spreadsheet and going through every line. The version of this that actually interrupts the cycle is smaller than that. It's the sentence that names the weight rather than the number. Something like, I've been carrying this in a way I haven't really let you see. Not the debt itself, you know about that, but what it's been like on the inside. And I think it's been making me less available than I want to be. That sentence. That is not a financial disclosure. That is an intimacy restoration, and it asks something entirely different of the conversation that follows. For anyone watching who doesn't have a partner, the interruption looks different, but the mechanism is the same. Naming this to yourself, clearly, is its own version of witnessing the fact that you now have language for what has been happening. That the distance you've been feeling in your relationships has a mechanism, and the mechanism is not who you are. That is already a different internal position than the one you arrived with. The one step for this week is this. Identify one relationship, one person, where the financial shame has been creating distance you wish wasn't there. You don't have to have the full conversation. You don't have to disclose anything you're not ready to disclose. The step is to write down privately, just for you, what that distance has actually cost. Not in dollars, in moments, in conversations that went flat, in versions of yourself you couldn't access. Writing it down is not the conversation, but it is the step before the conversation becomes possible. One step, not a system. And for the viewer who is thinking, we've already talked about the money, I don't have a secret situation. The question is not whether your partner knows the fact of the debt. The question is whether they know what it has been like for you to carry it. Those are different conversations, and most people have had the first one and not yet had the second. If this opens something you want to take further, specifically the conversation with someone in your life, the guide in the description was built for exactly that next step. It's in the description and the pinned comment. What's one way money stress has shown up in your relationships that you never quite connected to the money? Until right now. So here is what is true now that wasn't named before this video. The distance in your relationships, the half-presence, the canceled plans, the conversations that never quite opened, is not a relationship problem wearing a financial face. It is a financial shame problem wearing a relationship face. And those two things require entirely different responses. A relationship problem requires better communication skills, more intentional time, different conversations. A financial shame problem requires something more specific. The mechanism named, the weight witnessed, the cycle interrupted at the point where shame becomes concealment, and concealment becomes absence. This is genuinely hard, not because the people in your life aren't capable of holding this, most of them are, but because shame, by design, makes exposure feel more dangerous than it is. It is supposed to feel that way. That feeling is not a signal that disclosure is wrong. It is a signal that the shame response is working exactly as it was built to work. Which means the only way through it is to do the thing it is telling you not to do, carefully. At your own pace, one sentence at a time. You are not going to be carrying this the same way in a year if you take one real step in the next 7 days. Not a full conversation, not a financial overhaul. One sentence, written down privately, about what the distance has actually cost. That's the whole ask. The version of you that is fully present at the dinner table, that isn't calculating in the background, that laughs without the lag, that can say yes without running the numbers first. That version is not gone. It is just on the other side of a secret that has been carried alone for long enough. You've already taken a step today. You know what this is now. That's the part that changes first.